best versus not so great woodlots. The first thing I look for when it comes to what I call a woodlot that I'm looking to hunt is I want that woodlot to be near an area that can grow big bucks. That is the most important thing. There are so many woodlots that you could technically hunt, okay, especially where I live. And yeah, you might get a buck here or there, but you know, I want to be on big buck year after year. So the particular woodlots I look for is they got to be near a refuge area, anything near a golf course, okay, near city limits. Factories tend to get overlooked. Some of your bigger factories can have wetland areas that nobody's allowed to hunt. So a woodlot that's adjacent to it. Anywhere that you can essentially have a woodlot near an area where they can grow big. Cover versus non-cover, okay? So not all woodlots obviously are created equal. When I'm looking at a woodlot, you know, I'll look at a topo map, and if I see that little swamp symbol, okay, that's like good deal. That's what I'm looking for, all right? If I see, you know, just open hardwoods, doesn't mean that a big buck can't utilize it. Once again, it all kind of depends upon where the woodlot is located. But I want to see cover in that woodlot, or if I see a dip, if I see, you know, the topo map showing that deeper dip, that could also mean that it's a wetland area as well, where water would reside in the bottom. And anytime where you got water, usually you got thick stuff, thick, swampy, brush, whatever you want to call it. So I want that area in that woodlot to be thick, okay? And that's also going to help me get in on that woodlot, get in on a buck if he's using that woodlot. Woodlots are obviously small, and these big bucks, they know how to utilize them to their advantage, and I don't think many people know how to utilize some of the advantages of a woodlot to their advantage. So right now I'm going to talk about wind, okay, and how to approach a woodlot. But before I talk about wind, I think it's important to know how a buck utilizes a woodlot first, okay, before us as hunters utilize a woodlot, because a lot of people, they just put their stand up, looks like a good area, maybe a thick area. They put their stand up, they walk in, and more often than not, they're busting their target buck out of a particular woodlot. So let's take a look right now at what I look for in regards to an ideal spot to kill a buck. Okay, so when it comes to finding where a buck is going to utilize a woodlot, once again, it's that security cover. So if you don't have that swampy area, then you're going to want to look for that thickest area in the woods or a woodlot. Now, in this particular little woodlot that I'm in, I have essentially this brush pile. Okay, and this was a man-made brush pile, looks like from years ago. But what makes this particular spot so special is that it's right on a corner. So I don't know if you can look over my shoulder here, okay? But I have all of this field right here. As a matter of fact, there is a farmhouse up there. There is a farm over there. And there is another farm back there. So a buck can come in here and he can literally see all of this behind him and tuck himself right behind this wood pile. So he can see anything coming. And with this particular piece too, if anybody's going to come into this particular piece of property, they're going to come from this direction because the farm road is right there. Okay, so deer obviously over time know how farmers approach this particular spot. So with that in mind though, is behind me, this is where the woodlot is back here. Okay, so what deer are going to do is they're only going to sit in this particular spot when the wind is coming from this particular direction, because they no longer have to look into this thicker area, okay, where they can't see, and have the wind of any predator or humans blow to them. All right, so once again, they're going to use this spot here where they can see, and the spot behind me to smell. All right, so that's how you can kind of predict where a buck is going to be. So a buck is always going to be on that downwind side of a woodlot, okay, where there's thick cover, and then also one of these little either brush piles, it can be a big old tree that fell over, something to give them that little cover where they can just stick their head up over the top just enough to look over. And then once again, if you look over the top here, I'm up on a hill. So they also have height advantage, and they utilize that to their advantage as well. So as a deer hunter, as a bow hunter, it makes it tough to get in on a buck sitting here, all right? So here's the plan of attack that if I knew or I assumed that a buck was utilizing this spot, okay, this is how I would go after him. All right, so I have that cover behind me where I would expect a big buck possibly to sit. Let's just assume that I know that buck is there. Maybe I shined him in there. Maybe I had a cell cam on the other end of this woodlot. I am assuming that he's in this particular spot. Where would I set up? So what I would do is I look over a bigger map and I would look to see where I think he would go for whatever reason. Maybe I know that there's a couple of doe families in a woodlot over, or maybe I know there's that big refuge area and I want to get in, or that buck might be heading towards that refuge area for whatever reason, or a food source, whatever it might be. What I'm going to look for then is I'm going to look for the closest cover and try to get to him as close as possible in between where he wants to go and where he's from, all right? So one thing that I've been utilizing that has worked out very well, I've killed a couple of nice bucks utilizing this method, is waiting for that windy day. And I want wind and lots of it. It allows me to hide my sound walking in. And the other thing I take advantage of are leaves on trees. So a great time to utilize this process, okay, is during what a lot of people call the October lull. During that October lull, you have leaves in the trees, at least here in Wisconsin, okay? And you usually have those windy days. Take advantage of those. One of my best bucks I've killed, okay, was utilizing this particular process when it was windy out and getting up in a tree and getting within 70 yards and killing that big buck. And it was because of the wind covered my sound, and leaves blowing back and forth cover your movement, okay? Remember, it's all about movement. I know a lot of people put a lot of clout into camouflage, all right? And don't get me wrong, I use camo as well. But in my mind, what really catches a big buck's attention from a vision perspective is movement. Movement is your worst enemy when it comes to a buck's vision. Another advantage that I find that I don't think a lot of people think of is the ability to have permission to hunt woodlots, okay? Now, you know, it's getting much harder to find permission on areas to hunt, land to hunt, and I don't lease any property. It's either knock on door permission, where I offer labor and venison at the end of the year, or public land. So one of the nice things about these smaller woodlots is that you can knock on doors, especially if it's a small woodlot, and most people kind of overlook it and get permission to hunt those particular woodlots. And now, especially with the map systems are out there, you know, not always, but some of these maps will show you that there is a wetland area or marshy wet area in that woodlot to investigate. Matter of fact, some of the permission areas that I got to hunt, knock on door permission areas, I just approached the landowner and said, hey, I said, I'd like to hunt your piece of property. And he's like, well, why? It's only 5 acres. It's only 6 acres. And I'm like, hey, I only need an acre to kill a big buck. And they're like, go right ahead. And usually too, you don't have pressure, outside pressure, hunting that particular or those particular woodlots. So take advantage of that as well. It's another advantage is that it's much easier to get permission to hunt those small woodlots than some of those really nice looking big areas that a lot of people look for. You know, now a lot of people think of woodlots as a con to a woodlot. You know, they're small. You know, which woodlot is holding the big buck? You know, you could go and sit in a 10-acre woodlot all night just to find out that there was never a single deer in that particular woodlot. But I look at it the other way. The pro is to a woodlot is that you can monitor it much better than, let's say, a big tract of woods. What I mean by that is in July and August, early September, those are my times I'm doing observation sits. So I'm usually sitting off of a woodlot, usually in a brushy fence line, and observing deer from afar. Here in Wisconsin, we're allowed to shine as well. So I'll go out in the evenings some nights and shine early season just to see if a particular buck is utilizing a woodlot. And woodlots, I would say, you know what, in some way they actually take up more man hours because woodlots are kind of like quantity over quality sometimes. Just getting about 9-10 woodlots under your belt really helps out throughout the season. And, you know, you might get permission on 9 or 10 different woodlots, but it might be only 2 or 3 that actually pay off or have what you're looking for. The other thing is when it comes to woodlots and you find those particular areas where bucks bed in them, and you know that particular spot where you want that stand, you know, I have a couple of ladder stands that I have proven spots that I know a big buck in a small woodlot will go through. I'll put a ladder stand in that particular spot so I can get in on that windy day where that wind's blowing and making all that racket and stuff, and I can sneak in. The trouble is I've got spots where I put a particular ladder stand and I only use that ladder stand once a year, and I have a ladder stand that I haven't used in 3 years just because it hasn't revealed where a big buck has been. So it takes a lot more man hours to find your big buck, and it also might take, well, maybe a little bit of resources in stands, like I just mentioned, because you don't want to be messing around with a lot of movement, a lot of noise. You can't make a mistake when you're trying to get on these woodlot bucks. You almost have to think very stealth, ninja-like to get on these woodlot bucks because they have everything covered. They know who's been what and where. All right, so one thing you might be asking is, okay, Clint, I have a big buck in a particular woodlot, all right? And, you know, I know he's in there. It's open hardwoods. I think I know where he's bedding. How do I go in and get him? Because if I go anywhere near that woodlot, he's going to see me. He's going to spot me. The next best thing is you're going to have to use a fence line that he might be utilizing. And usually those work a little bit better, I think, in the mornings during that pre-rut time period. The other thing that you can utilize as well that I've had luck with in the past is utilizing a deer decoy, or essentially a buck decoy. And what you might do is you might do a little bit of a calling sequence during that pre-rut time phase, and essentially you're just going to try to draw him in and see if he comes into your setup. And then once again, you can utilize that brushy fence line. Maybe you have a rock pile, maybe you have an old apple tree that you can hide under. But something that maybe you can draw him in. So there are other options that you can utilize to catch a buck out of, let's say, for whatever reason, a small woodlot that's open hardwoods, because to get in on them, especially if it's like 2, 3, 4 acres, it's almost impossible to do, if not impossible. But once again, set up on that fence line that you know that he might run to, or try to utilize a decoy. I would utilize the fence line first before I utilize the decoy. All right. But you probably only get one shot, so you have to determine that, because once you burn up that shot, he's going to know that you were there, because at night he's going to be moving back and forth, and he's going to know where you were set up. Okay, when it comes to human pressure, from my experience, a lot of bucks, especially in these pressured wooded areas here in Wisconsin, they move at night. And you know, they go from woodlot to woodlot, and they know who's been there. And I personally think they know not only who's been there, but how long they've been there, meaning they know somebody's been sitting in a tree stand. They can tell from the scent on the ground that they know that, okay, this individual has been here for quite some time, and he's out to get me. All right, not that you're just walking through randomly. So what I do is after work, you know, maybe I don't have enough time to get in the woods. I'm driving by my woodlot that I have permission to hunt, and I'm starting to look in the area to see who's hunting the other woodlots. And sometimes the more pressure I see in those other woodlots, knowing that the particular woodlot that I have permission to hunt, that woodlot just increases in value, all right? So kind of keep that in mind. So always kind of know who your neighbors are, what they're doing, the pressure around you. And a lot of times that woodlot just keeps increasing better and better and better just due to that surrounding human pressure. All right, so if you look over my shoulder here, I don't know what you want to call these. I kind of call them pits, okay? There's these little wooded areas. Sometimes they're little grassy areas in a field. They're basically little dips or pits that farmers just can't get into and farm, and they've been there for years and so on and so forth. These little islands or pits, they can make some of the biggest buck spots in woodlot or farm ag country, because they have it all. They can go into an edge, they can see through it, and you know, most people just negate them. They don't even walk even by them, and they can spot you from afar. So once again, you're going to utilize that little tactic of maybe going to the next woodlot over okay? Setting up in there, assuming though that you know that on the backside of this particular woodlot that there might be a reason that a buck is going to go through there. He has to have a reason. He's not going to just come out of a little pit per se and walk right at you. Once again, you could maybe utilize a deer decoy, possibly, maybe a little bit of calling, but in high pressured areas, especially here where I hunt, you know, rattling, they've heard a lot of it. They've heard a lot of grunt calls. I tend to avoid that. I just try to catch them completely off guard. But these little pits right here can be dynamite if you set up correctly and kind of get in between them and where they're willing to go. And these here, I tend to like these more during that late pre-rut, just the start of the rut time frame. The other thing is these little pits, matter of fact, to set up in them actually during the middle of the rut. A lot of times big bucks, especially early morning, when they're out going around doing their thing, looking for hot does, they'll hit these pits because they know that does will utilize them as well. So also keep that in mind. So sometimes an overlooked spot that I've seen big bucks utilize are junk piles. And junk piles, essentially, what they do is, especially if they're in the woods, they block the trees from growing. And in doing so, it allows sunlight to come in, and that sunlight grows all this underbrush. So these deer or big bucks, they can utilize these old pieces of farm machinery to hide within. And then on top of that, the junk piles allow burdocks to grow in between them because the sunlight is now growing burdocks and all this underbrush, and it can get really thick with grasses and so on and so forth. So those can make actually very good spots for big bucks to utilize. So don't overlook junk piles. Matter of fact, some of the best spots I've seen where bucks will sit right in a junk pile, and even if it's close to the farm or to the barn or whatever it might be, assuming that it's very brushy and thick, so on and so forth. All right, so one thing I want to talk about real quick are ash trees or dead ash trees. Here in Wisconsin, especially in the eastern side of Wisconsin, southeast Wisconsin, we had the emerald ash borer, and it killed basically all of our ash trees, all right? But the thing with ash trees is they usually grow in thick, swampy areas. And then not only are from ash trees being dead, okay, the sun can hit underneath more now, and it's growing up all of this thick underbrush, which is creating awesome security cover, okay? So when you drive along and let's just say you're inspecting woodlots or possibly woodlots that you would like to hunt, whether they're on public or private, one of the things I look for from a distance are ash trees or dead ash trees. Because if I see a lot of dead ash trees on a particular spot, even though it looks ugly from afar, that usually means that there's a lot of security cover in that particular woodlot. So don't underestimate dead ash trees. That's one of the things that I've been really focusing on these last couple of years in regards to getting permission to hunt some of these spots is dead ash trees, because that means there's a security cover there. One of the things I also look for, especially in wet woodlots, are willows or willow trees. Willows are kind of a unique tree when it comes to buck beds, because usually a willow is going to grow somewhere where it's going to be high off the ground. So if it's wet all around, a buck can bed under that big willow tree. So if you find willows, focus on those as far as assuming that a big buck could be utilizing that. Check it out in February and March when you do your scouting, your preseason scouting. A lot of times you'll see those buck beds underneath those willows. But if you're new, you have a new spot, let's just say you got a brand new spot that you found, and you see a willow and you don't want to, don't go in there now during bow season. But I would just assume that a big buck is using it, err on the side of caution, and then set up accordingly. One thing I just want to reiterate is that big bucks are going to hide, and they're going to go where there's little to no human pressure. All right, so don't overlook these small woodlots, anything from, like I said, 1 acre to 20 acres. And essentially, I find that 10 to 15 acres to be ideal, just because those spots tend to get overlooked. And like I mentioned earlier, it could be a brushy area, a junk pile, a pit, a wood pit, a small little area that just a few trees grow. These bucks are going around at night, and they're finding out where the humans are not. And essentially, that's where they're calling home. So, all right, folks. Well, it's the middle of bow hunting season here, and I burned up a bow hunting night for you folks. It's a little warm tonight, And I got done with work a little bit later, so I didn't think I had the time to get in the woods. I thought I'd make you guys this particular video. So please subscribe for my sacrifice of not going in the woods tonight. And I hope one of these next videos coming to you shortly is going to be me arrowing a buck from the stand. And yeah, I'm looking forward to it, whether it be woodlots in farm country or public land in northern Wisconsin. All right, well, I hope you enjoyed these videos. Once again, Clint, from Oak and Iron Outdoors.